Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and inmates, and welcome to another session from the Wise Asylum. Same old garbage going on in La La Land. Trump's giving it the big, I am fantastic, yet he's mentioned 38,000 times in 5,000 documents that have come out from the Epstein gig. It's a lot of mentions, so he's definitely bedded in, but he pretends he's not. Maybe because he's not the original Trump, as some are saying. Quite possible. Just as the Putin that we see isn't the original Putin, which I've said for a long time. He's a fat face, this one, and the other one was very thin in the face, just like Joe Biden. The Joe Biden that we saw, it just didn't look like the original Joe Biden in any way, shape, or form. So what is going on with our leaders? Yeah, I mean, of course, here, the full 100% themselves, because they are assholes, especially that Jimmy Savile's vagina. I can't believe he thinks he's good. You know, he gets, and I am going to stop the children seeing social media because everybody's grassing us up. And we want them to vote because we've programmed them. We spent a lot of money through Common Purpose and programmed them to death to obey, conform, and to think that we're all fantastic. Desperation. It's a stepping stone, of course. They haven't gone all out like Australia have, but they're getting there. Yeah, it's like, oh, we want command of the old thing. If you put filth up on the internet, it wants to be removed. And it'd better be removed from every other thing. Which, we don't really want filth on there anyway. Best thing they've ever done is make you sign in and identify yourself for porn. I suppose the sneaky viewers are probably not going to look at it anymore. Hardcore, of course, don't care because they're swinging the cocks and the fannies all over the internet on pictures, sending it to each other, hoping to get laid. It's quite ridiculous, isn't it, really? But that is what they do these days. There's more dicks and fannies on the internet than you could imagine. It's quite ridiculous, but that's the way it is, unfortunately. Iran, oh, it's not looking good, is it? You've got the big gob George Galloway, the arsehole that won't debate me. In the same speech he said last time they were going to attack Iran. Exactly the same. He's just like a... What is he? He's like a recording that they made in 1983. Or maybe even 1984. He's such a... He used to look good. He used to look cool. But now we can see that he's just another arsewipe involved with Chalco Westminster. But he's saying the same shit again. It will be a war of abomination. Everybody's going to die. And blah, 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 blah. Exactly what he said last time. It looked like they were going to attack Iran. Now, my guess would be, when it comes to Iran, is they will, or they intend to attack Iran. They will try all sorts of things between now and the midterm elections in America, which is November. To get it going. So they need Iran or some event to kick off where they can blame Iran and then launch the Johnny-come-lately stuff all over Iran. As if they haven't had enough shit since the Shah got snotted. They just like to torture people, don't they, these PCIs. They're good at that. It's the only thing they actually know. So I do feel sad for Iran because there's a lot going on over there. And of course now they have the monster controlled by the PCIs ready to strike. And that ain't good for anybody. But George Galloway, he's just such a pathetic creature. Same rhetoric, same shouting, same screaming as he did before. I hope you've noticed that. Because he isn't what you think he is. He never has been. And I chased him all over the show when he were in Respect in Bradford, because I knew full well that he were importing, or rather covering, the mass importation of the Pashtun, or the Taliban. So he's not what you think he is. If he were, he would have happily debated with me on all his platforms, because I chased him everywhere. Wouldn't have it at all. He was then married to a Muslim woman, now he's married to some Eastern European. So whichever way the wind blows, Gorgeous George, as they used to call him, he's following his cock. And of course his cock says, we must go over here, because this is where the new rhetoric's coming from. You have to pretend to be the bastion of protection for this next realm of whatever. So, up yours, George. You're a tosser. I out you as a tosser. And debate me. Let's have a little debate. Don't be such a puff. Anyway, that's that. So, Trump's off. They're off. They're getting ready to hit around. But my guess is they'll do it. You see, what I think is going to happen is they really don't want the midterm elections in America to take place for the simple reason Trump's mentioned 38,000 times in 5,000 documents. So he clearly can't pretend they weren't busy mates. And there's a lot of videos out there which are not new. I mean, it's like everybody's, oh my God, look at what we found out. Look, I've been reporting on Epstein for 10 years. You know, all the mind mapping, all this nonsense with Neuralink, all MIT, all funded by Epstein. I was telling you this 10 years ago. It's like, where were you then? What's happened that you know all of a sudden you get it? You know, well, last 5 years probably it's made you waking up a bit. But just think, I was telling you this 10 years ago and you didn't get what I was saying. Now you get it. What does that tell you about how thick you used to be? And that you're not quite as thick as you were then? No. It's like people are pretending that it's all brand spanking new. It's not all brand spanking new. It's been regurgitated. And you all think you're getting something new. So you're all over it. If you haven't worked it out by now, the fact that there is a massive blackmail network run by them that run Israel, that claim to be Jewish, have nothing to do with the Torah whatsoever, save for the fact they keep talking about it. They operate under the Talmud. And they're all Eastern European or Russians. So they are Bolsheviks. Yeah, they are the ones that run this blackmail network of all your politicians, all your celebrities, all your big business leaders. And from that, they've got them all doing exactly what they're told. And yet, most people are fanning around calling paedophiles, everybody a paedophile that's clearly not a paedophile, because they weren't necessarily having the hots for prepubescent. It's just, it's la land in full swing, and it only works on ignorance. 100% ignorance. And it's rather sad that people focus to that and not just go, well, wait a minute. The point of focus must be we need to remove our politicians, celebrities, etc. off this blackmail grid so we can get a bit of sense again. We give up their handlers. That's the prime motive if they want some kind of amnesty. They give up their handlers. We only need to arrest them wherever they are in the world as a global agenda. And we basically got rid of these chosen ones, chosen by themselves, of course, in one fell swoop. We get our world back, and we can put it back to being the earth. Of course, that's a fantasy, because most people are just so far down the rabbit hole, or up the rabbit hole, because they've not gone down it, they've gone up one, and they're dependent completely on this shit show, and believe that shouting at the shit show, protesting at the shit show, getting cross at the shit show, is going to change things. Well, it's not. You know what you've got to change? You're not going to change the shit show, because the shit show is made up of idiots who don't know any different. And if they for a second believe they're going to lose the power in that shit show, they're just going to buckle down. They're going to harden. You're wasting your time. The change has to be in you. Educate yourself. Get off your pajamas. Get out on the street. Do something that's not supporting the shit show. Use cash. Don't use direct debit. All these things that you can do, but it's far too difficult. I know it's too difficult, but you're a rebel. You're a rebel. Because you tell everybody you're a rebel, and you convince yourself you're a rebel every night before you go to Bobo's. Well, I'll tell you now, you're not. You're no further out of the shit show than Stormer or Trump. You're just lying to yourself. You're in a fantasy world. Because you just can't be asked. Oh, it's too hard. I can't do that. So there you go. Yeah, you can't do it. So what are you mourning for? You've already given up. You've let down. You've bent over and said, bum me stupid, Mr. State. Bum me stupid because I have nothing about myself to change it. I can't be asked. And because nobody's told me what to do. You know, it's a sad state of affairs. Unfortunately, that's where we're at. And the shit show continues. The diversions are all over the shop and everybody's following the diversions. What a happy gig. It is if you're a small app. They're loving it. They're absolutely loving it. While they're shoving the front system, another Talmudic operation, all over West. See, you focus to that and miss the real cause. You need to focus to the cause and its front and recognise that they're one and the same. If you get rid of the front, you don't get rid of the back end. Get rid of the back end first, then you can deal with the front end. It's all upside down. Precisely how they want it. It's called inversion. And it's worked for thousands of years. Thousands of years. You can just, anywhere in history, you can see it playing out. The same programs. Different toys, different faces. Same agendas. Same agendas, same programming, the lot. And you've only got to look back to the Second World War. Not 63 Squadron, that's when it were happening. I'm talking about from 23 to 39. How did they get there? How did this bunch of colonialists, merchant class, take over Germany? Here, United States. Oh, well, Federal Reserves. You look at that, you're getting a big idea. Funny money. The money that you all chase, you're following this. I want them, but you've not got a six-figure. You've not got a six-figure salary. I can't bang you. You're not good enough for me. And I can't even wash up. Kind of thing. That's the kind of attitude. I've got big nails and I've got foreskins in my lips. But don't ask me to wash up because I don't know how to do it. And cooking, I haven't got a clue. You have to take me out, wine and dine me, six-figure salary, while I stay at home with my big nails plonking on my face ache and my Instagram. And I might even do one of them, what they call that filthy one. I forgot what it's called. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about, don't you? What a mess. What an absolute diatribe we've got going down here everywhere. So tonight, again, we're just going to further cement this idea that, well, it's not actually an idea. I mean, it is for most people because they're going, well, it's revisionist. Well, actually, no, it's not revisionist anything. This is how it is. Everything else that you believe is real because academics have presented it, given it in your school books, in your encyclopedias. That's the revisionist garbage, and it's a big fake up and a lie. So I'm not a revisionist. I'm saying it is how it is. This is how it really is, not this garbage over there that these academics have told you. But we went to university. I've got a degree. I must be fucking amazing because somebody said I was. And give me a piece of paper. Okay. You go with that if you want. You stick to that, lad, if you want, all the way through. Carry on. It's good. It's good for the ego. But you just play with yourself. You're a fart in a bottle. And you're just playing into the game. So we're going to have a look again at just Aggie Shaggers. Because they took over England. They came out of Europe. All the sea families. East India companies. The Levant first, of course. Well, actually, the Portuguese were the first. The naughty little buggers. Them Solomon Templars over there in Portugal. Who have thrust out a new... Two kings! He's two kings in fucking one! He says. And he's using AI like a good one. Showing us lions and tigers and all this malarkey and going, I am the fucking king of the UK. Okay, yes. Get back to Portugal, son, because you're not really wanted here. You're a dick. You know what I'm saying? You're not really up to scratch. I think probably Andy would have been a better monarch than Charlie. Maybe that's why they've thrown him under the bus. When, of course, forgetting that Charles' best mate, just as Jimmy Savile's vagina, Keir Starmer's best mate was, of course, Sir Jimmy Savile. People forget that while they're all getting cross at Andy for paying 15 grand for banging a bird at 17-year-old 3 times. Well, tell me out there, you fellas, if you got the chance, okay, you might not be able to afford the 5 grand, but if you got the chance to bang a 17-year-old when you're old and fat and ugly and your wife's won't even come near you because you fart all the time, would you? You're fucking damn right you would. But, it's outrageous. Everybody's focused at Andy. And now they're even talking about the collapse of the monarchy. If you think we've had a fucking monarchy here since 1649, you are really... There's just no hope for you. There's been no monarch upholding your sovereignty, which came from the Heavenly Father, since 1066. Even the Magna Carta isn't common law. Do you want to know what common law is? Because there's so much garbage about it. I thought, do you know what, Shawnee boy? It's about time you just put this straight. Because it's common law this and common law that, and people haven't got a fucking clue what it is. So I'm going to show you. And I'm going to show you right now. Okay? So get this in your minds, kiddies, because... dear Agnes, it's no wonder that's pissing up the wall and against the wind. Right. Pay attention, inmates. It's important. If you want to get out of the asylum, the other one, and remain fixed into this asylum, this is the gig you need to get in your minds. So, the common law comes from the rights ordained by the Father, the original jurisdiction of a free people, which of course in old school is a nation. So people and nation and race are one and the same, okay? And the rights afforded to that come from the Heavenly Father, or the Father of the beginnings, because the Heavenly Father in this mix, their mix is of course Zeus, and he's a little bit naughty, is he not? The rights are unalienable and therefore unchangeable, and they are unchangeable. They are there, they exist, they're unchangeable. And to be quite frank, nobody actually does change it, only yourself. We've got a lot of Johnny-come-latelys playing around, but they don't change what is unalienable. They wouldn't dare. They have to play a blag. And to play a blag means they have to have somebody that they can blag. That'd be you. Common law is not history or a relic. Okay? Common law means no harm and to keep your word or be honest. Okay? Deception is of the antagonist. Every time you're persuaded to deceive, play a deception, no matter how slight, and it's business, you've got to understand something. You've shifted out to common law. So stop scracking your eyeballs out when you get shenotted. You're not upholding common law. You're always out to harm. You've convinced yourself it's not to do with harm because it's just a sleight of hand, because it's business. But that's deception. So you're not keeping your word. And you're not in sync with common law. So you're out of that mix with the Heavenly Father from the get-go. But teachers, follow teacher if you want. Follow teacher if you want. It's fine. Now, common law says no harm. So if there's no harm, then there's no crime. And if there's no victim, because no harm has been committed, then there is no jurisdiction. You're still free. And if there's no contract, there's no obligation. And if there's no consent, excuse me, then there's no authority from anywhere else. You remain free. Okay? It is the law that existed before governments, kings and hoity-toits. Common law reminds us that government is a servant. It is not a master. Government holds power as a servant, of course, that people delegate. So it's 100% a creation of people. But it's got to be consensual, hasn't it? We offered our sovereignty up to the office of monarch in order that office and the holder of that office would do nothing but uphold our rights, or what we'd agreed to accept as acceptable. Its duties are simple, and it is. It continues the old adage of do no harm and keep your word. Don't be telling little fibs. Right? So government is a separate entity. It's there to mimic what is, as in common law, and it's like jumping off. Oh, I'm happy to be free and real in the intensity of life. We started to create little gigs where we felt safer, and Samuel is the place to go to look for why we're in this mess. Okay, so it's a creation of the people, but it's supposed to serve the people. When it doesn't, then it's not right. But it still doesn't cut the ice, really, because it's just a little bit more that we need to remember. Under government, rules come before reason. So once they've set up some rules, it doesn't matter about reason, sanity, what's right or wrong. Rules is rules to them, because they don't know any different. They've no creativity. They've no morality. You see, when you're following rules to that degree, you've lost morality. Yeah? You're an empty shell. There's nothing to you. You are an empty vessel following rules. All right? It acts under a presumed jurisdiction. Remember, no harm, no crime. No victim, no jurisdiction. But this thing acts under a presumed jurisdiction. So he's just invented it. But originally it was made by man. So it wasn't an invented necessarily. It was a created, and it was there supposedly to serve the people. So what it actually does in this presumed jurisdiction, it replaces consent. Okay? So we're creeping off now. It's a presumed jurisdiction. Your consent or anything. Oh, well, no, actually, no, you're here, you're there, you stood there, you're answering. You're arguing. Yep, you've consented. You're arguing with what I've said to you. You're not doing it right. So that's why all of a sudden you're there. You've consented because you're here arguing with me. It's all about how you do the lingo that decides whether you give them that consent or you obfuscate that all the time and block it. Government is only administrative authority, pretending to be the law. It impersonates the law, just as these Johnny-come-latelys today called the police are basically just private for-profit enforcement agents, enforcing nothing but policy. But then this is the kicker. They're pretending to be constables, when the constables are governed by 9 principles, which is very clear that a constable's role is not to enforce policy. It's there to service law in spite of policy and in spite of public opinion. Unless public opinion completely goes against it, and then it has to rebrand itself, redraft itself, so that it's accepted again by the people. But of course, the 9 principles are still based on citizens, so they've already grabbed. They've grabbed it still. But the police were set up to stop the riots in the mills. That's what they were set up for. Okay, so they're pretending to be constables. So that's a crime. It's a criminal offence. 6 months in jail. So every single copper out there now, uniform, now they're armed. By golly. They're running around the streets with guns. Yeah. But nobody, it's too difficult. It's far too difficult. We can't be doing with that. Now, under government, the crime is not harm. It's your non-compliance. So the jurisdiction that they're presuming is not because you committed a crime of harm, because there's no victim. It's because you didn't comply. Right? That's where their authority comes from. Non-compliance. Now, when you get into it, of course, they have to have it that way because you're funding their whole gig. Charges, fines, levies, licenses, that's what finances government. And if you're not complying by not financing them, these little Johnny-come-latelys, then, of course, you're harming them. But you're harming the fantasy, so it's not a common law harm. It's not law. Yeah, it's a presumption. The state believes that your labour as a person, so now we're getting it. Now we're getting there. We're nowhere near people now. People's gone. The state believes your labour as a person is regulated privilege. All right? So, there you go. Everything you do now, they have to make a charge. Because it's a privilege. And it's got to be regulated. Okay? But of course, you can't be a people. You've got to be a person. Or a human. Because, of course, human comes first. And a human is afforded all the rights of person. And that is in the Vatican Catechism. I can never say that word. Okay, so now we get in there. Something's happened. Something shifted. No longer a people. People, they're all persons. So under common law, your right to trade, exchange, and barter are free. The freedoms. You have a freedom to trade, exchange, and barter. Because, of course, you're not actually doing any harm there. It's an agreement. Now, there is no harm in this action unless, of course, the secondary common law maxim is you're operating a deception. Okay? Because then you're pretending to sell something, exchange something, to trade something on the basis that it's this, when in fact it's not. It's that, and they don't find out until they've give you the shekels. Of course, then you're not keeping your word, are you? And then, in truth, you've caused a loss. And of course, that has to be rectified because a loss is harm. Yep, it's a harm. And if you've caused it, well, then you're there then. You're no longer free. You're going to be bound by this common law that you need to make things right. Now, government statutory law declares that you must be licensed. You must be regulated and taxed on your labour activities. And it holds authority only over persons, but not a free people. So, in that presumption, you are not a people. You are a person. And until you show that you are not a person, their presumptions, their administration stands. And this is why it's getting more and more difficult out there now, because they are just assuming now that everybody is a person, because they've probably got everybody licensed one way or another. They've got everybody on a national insurance number, a birth certificate, etc. And they're hammering down now. Things that worked in the courts are no longer working. They're ignoring everything. But even ignoring something is an action. It's just that we don't understand how to deal with it. Well, I say you don't understand how to deal with it. A lot of people think, oh, I've won, they haven't replied, blah, 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 blah. Have your bollocks. They're implementing a particular strategy. Now, as a people, you are free until harm is done. So if that freedom that's ordained by the Heavenly Father only exists until you commit harm, you injure or create a loss in somebody else off your own bat. Now, this is where it gets a little bit technical. We're not discussing here, which is what the Peter's version of the gospel is, that if you were protecting yourself, which is a natural law within us all, that then you're not going to go out to create harm and damage. That's a reactionary gig. It's not in opposition to your common law rights. You have a common law right to defend yourself, and that is referenced in English common law. Protect your castle, protect your family, protect your flesh and blood. Now, and this is why it's important that people understand that the original church built off Yeshua wasn't this shit show that came out of Byzantium or even Constantinople, because that's where they created the Church of Peter. And thus put the entire Western race at a disadvantage to the fruit bats in all the other nations controlled by these merchant class. Yeah, so the way that they've formed these religions has put everybody that follows them at a disadvantage because they don't understand their own lingo. That's on you, as we've discussed many times before. Now, as a people, you're free until harm is done. Then you step out of that freedom ordained by the Heavenly Father because you must make restitution. And restitution must be made to make the injured or the victim whole. Now, that is justice. That is what justice is. Okay? You harm somebody, you make it right. Yeah? Not let's go to prison and then charge the taxpayer for that full year in prison. That's not the same gig. Which is why Queen Elizabeth said clearly when she took the throne that she can't give you justice. Okay? Because that's not what she were about. She were about charge and prison. Completely different gigs, right? So in essence, statutory law demands that you are to be regulated by default. So it's an automatic presumption, and unless you can come forward and present to the contrary, they're just going to railroad you. But common law honours sovereignty. Okay, so sovereign citizen, oxymoron. It's two opposites. You know, and so many people have run around on that, it's quite ridiculous. Again, it comes down to a lack of education. Not from the schools, but you going out your way to educate yourself. Statutory law manufactures subjects and citizens. Okay? So it actually which is what it's done with the birth certificate, national insurance number, all the licenses, etc. Yeah, all the funny language. You're a resident, you know, you're a voter, blah, de, blah, de, blah. That is manufacturing a subject. It's manufacturing a citizen. Yeah? Now, a citizen, of course, is actually a municipal slave. But then so is citizen. Okay? Municipal slaves. So straight away, you're not in common law, you're completely in commerce. Yeah? So statutory law is all about manufacturing the subjects and the citizens that they can then control. And statutory law shifts the people into human persons and thus beneath the rules of the state. So once they've manufactured that subject citizen and thrust it upon you from being at school at yes miss every morning when you get the name, they've got you. They've got you. Okay? You're not a people, you're now a human, and you've got rights as a person, and you are no longer under common law, you are beneath the state. So, in essence then, ladies and gentlemen, to make things right, you must understand the difference between a people and a person. The state will not budge or it loses power. So this is what I'm saying. You can't hold faith in it. Holding faith in the antagonist, which is what the state is, will keep you in its grasp. This is the problem you've all got. State pumps out the diversions. You're so dependent on it because you can't do things yourself. They've got you. They've still got you. You're in its grasp. You might think you're a rebel. You might think you're getting somewhere. I did this protest. I did that. I look for self-healing. I look to become this and blah, blah. It's called escapism in truth. And if you've ever lived by that, just know it. All you were doing is running away from yourself. Okay? You thought you were running away from the system when really you didn't realize that the system was in you. Okay? So if you're holding faith in the state, then you're going to be listening to its garbage. listen to its talking heads. You're going to be following the celebrities, already sold the soul into this system. You're still in its grasp. You're not thinking for yourself. You're not under common law. Because everything you're doing is always going to harm somebody. It's always going to cause harm. And if you're backing that because you've not realised that, then you're not innocent. Yeah? And this is why you're stuck in it and fixing it. Why me? Oh. That's why. Now the change must come in you. Cease being person and learn how to be a man of the people. So all the change you're looking for is in you. If you're looking for it anywhere else, you're looking outside of yourself, you're not following Yeshua, you're not seeking the kingdom within. You're not a Christian. Oh, actually, you might be a Christian because I actually don't know what that is, apart from following a thesis that were given to you by these merchant class. So, you need to know it. It doesn't matter how many years you've been studying the Bible, how many years you've prayed and given it the big, Let me tell you now, you're so far away from the teaching, it's ridiculous. And you can cry about it all night. You can go to bed tonight, cry. You can throw witchcraft at me all day if you want and say, he's an evil bastard, and that's fine. I don't give a fuck. I really don't. Because if you can't get it, if you can't get it in your mind, you're never going to act it. So you might as well forget it, forget everything I've said, and curt on being a fruit bat. Because that's the best you're going to come up with for yourself. But at least don't thrust it on your offspring. You know what I'm saying? So there's your common law. In truth. It's not as simple as you think. You can't just revert to Magna Carta. You can't just revert to this and go, well, it's discussed, blah, 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 blah. If you're a person or a human, they've got you. It's as simple as that. Arguing with him, wasting your time. You're already in there. You're arguing with them. You already give them the jurisdiction. Anyway, so that's the first stage of, well, actually, that is the sermon. The rest is just a bit of history. Again, to just put it in your minds that it is a merchant class that's colonized the entire world. It's colonized nations. It's colonized states, governments, militaries, everything. It pretends to be something it isn't. They are merchants. They are only interested in shekels, making money, getting power from money, from issuing money, and getting everybody in debt. That's all they're interested in. And when they take over a nation, they take over the tools of government and state, and then create a secret power base within secret societies. The hapless happy to join it because they think they're getting something, it makes them feel superior. And that's how they do it. It's very easy. Playing the ego, the violin on the ego. And before you know it, all power is in the hands of a very hidden and secret group who then controls the entire system of state by having its little flea bags in all the positions of power that matter. And then it might give you, you're independent now. You are now independent of the empire. It's a hidden empire, remember, ladies and gentlemen. And it's on the sea. And they have treasure islands everywhere. Oh, we call them offshore. So there's the gig, basically, in a nutshell. You want change? It changes in you. If you're not going to change you, you're going to change nothing. Nothing whatsoever. You're just going to get more cross, more anger, and you're going to back stuff that's going to create more harm. And it'll be based on your own prejudices. You didn't pick that dog shit up. I'm going to get you done. That's harm. That's not minding your own business. Not remembering that you've paid council to pick up the dog shit. It's their job. No, you get my drift. That's harm, actually. That is actually harm. So, because you're not being harmed by dog shit being on road, are you? Unless you're going to eat it, then you might catch some nauseous disease, but then that'd be your fault for eating it, won't it? Or you fell in it, you just go and wash your hands. Might be a bit of a pain in the ass. Just wash your hands. Don't start biting your nails before you wash your hands. You're going to get poorly. But then you've done it to yourself, haven't you? You get my drift. You getting what I'm saying there? Even slight things like that, you are pushing harm on another because you're following the system. Anyway, who's joined us? And then we'll crack on with this little bit of history. Just again to show you, or hopefully just cement in your minds, that this shit show of empire isn't a nation. It's a merchant class that take over nations, base itself in these nations. And to all the fruit bats, people believe it is a nation. And if anybody believes that these isles benefited from the empire, then just look at the old photographs when everybody were in the mill. They had no food, they had no shoes, no clothes, no electricity, no nothing. They were in the mines and in the mills 12 hours a day. That's not benefiting from empire. That's having your freedoms completely not taken away. Because if you don't do it, you can't survive. Because everything needs a shekel to go and buy it. Right. Mew says, suddenly it's Sunday and the wisest Alimites are gathering. Well, evening to you, Mew. John says, hello, lad. Maroon Fox says, evening all. Evening to you, Maroon Fox. And John. Fruit bats and aggie shaggers, says John. Yes, they're always in the mix, them lot. PY says, good evening all. Evening, PY music. Jerry gives it, evening, Sean, and all in the wise asylum. Evening, Jerry. Wood says, good evening, Sean, and all. Looking forward to seeing you at the Sheep Farm event. That's in May. Hopefully, Sean, yes, I'll be there. Same old hotel again. So there we go. If anybody wants to send their next door entities to try and shag me all night, just a bit more better looking, and you know what I mean? We might get somewhere. Of course, I'm only joking. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that. Mew gives it, if Tree makes an appearance tonight, wish you well. She had to say goodnight to her little dog, Mia, this past week. Yep, Tree's lost her dog. John says, R.I.P. the pooch. Peggy TJ 1WS says, Ghislaine Maxwell spotted on the street with her brother Boggy's channel. Yeah, they're not. Well, she's not been in prison. Not even in prison. Even that pillar fucking, the old thing was an hero. What's it called? I nearly said it then. WikiLeaks. What's he called? Assange. He weren't in prison. These are players, ladies and gentlemen. And as long as you believe it, well, then you believe it. Just like you all believed in Tommy the Tit. He's gone. He's run off. I'm fighting his man, but I'm off. I can't do with this. I'm a target. He wasn't as brave as everybody thought he were with it. Oh, dear heck. Jane E55. Good evening, Sean, David, Mods, and Chatters. Evening, Jane, Peggy. Beauty was replaced. Well, that's what they reckon. I think we've got it up here somewhere. There you go. His wife divorced, saying, the person that came back from the conference was not my husband. Well, look. Just look at the nose for a start. The bridge of the nose is far bigger on fat face than it was on the original Putin that we started to see from 1999 after the Chechnya event in 1999. Yep. Not the same geezer. The forehead. Unless he's had loads of foreskins slapped in his forehead like these girlies do. Not the same geezer. Not the same geezer. I mean, maybe we do have to start taking a bit more seriously this idea of clones, because, I mean, I found many, many moons ago that actually the first clone, the human clone they made, were in 1927. And they're still telling you you're on Dolly the sheep. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you look at all these, and a lot of celebrities are coming out and talking about it. I mean, this is another thing you can just, if you're still struggling with this idea of having to sell your soul to be in entertainment. I mean, I was in entertainment for a very long time, and there's not much I didn't see. But look at these, like, Vanilla Ice. These one-hit wonders that were good. Talented guys. Then the system itself would give you a taste. Okay, give them a taste. Yeah, we like that. It's great. We'll put you up. We'll give you everything. There's your taste. There's the deal. Well, the one-hit wonders are the ones that said, kiss my ass. I don't want the deal. The ones that carried on are the ones that said, shag me stupid. Bum me, do whatever you want with me. I just want to be famous and give me the money. That's the one. And now you can see it a bit better. But look, so many one-hit wonders, weren't there, all through 80s? And, well, there's the difference. They didn't take the deal. They didn't take the deal. I mean, we went to see Johnny Rotten last year. We watched PIL as a gig, and then we went to see him talking. That guy's took a deal. He's took a deal since Nora died. He's took a deal. He's in. He's playing. Simple as that. They're all in it. If they're getting the airplay, if they're getting on the gigs, if they're on the roundabout, they're in. It's as simple as that. You know, all these open, gig places wouldn't be open to you. If I said right now I'm going to start playing live, Madness, do you think I'd have any open doors? Would I? Bollocks. The thing about the 80s and the 90s was the fact that you could, you know, if you were paying, or you were going to give them door, or they just knew they were going to make a fortune on beer, every pub, club, and everywhere would have you. It was easy. It was very easy to, or you try getting gigs out. And of course, the criminal justice bill in the early 90s, on the back of the do, is what changed all that. And now there are no venues that are outside the grip of these PCIs. This is how they've done it. It's very clever. Where are we there? The real Biden was replaced. Yes, it's Peggy. You're quite right. There are several versions of Trump, so it would appear. And June says, evening Sean and chat, evening June. David Carl says, we have a leader. Oh, do we really? Oh. Paula Meadows says, evening to you, David. Paula says, evening Sean and everyone, sending love. Treen, so sad. Who am I really? Craig says, evening Sean, no, wait a minute, I've gone past it. Evening Sean and inmates. Surprised I'm not sleeping by now. Are you saying I'm boring you? Or are you just usually in bed? Evening to you, who am I really? Craig. Mr. Jim Drinsky says, evening Sean, only one version of me, thankfully. Yeah. AMG says, where have you been? This is dossing. You do too much dossing, you, AMG, I'm telling you. Evening Sean, Stumpy Jane, Rizzler, Mew, and all non-mutants. Evening AMG. Ulick says, evening Sean on chat, evening Ulick. Jerry says, evening Mr. Ulick. Any news from Pedram? Yeah, he's on. I've seen him earlier, so yes. Franz Booten. Evening, Sean. Good evening to you. George would have loved being followed by you, Sean. He didn't like it one bit, AMG. I were all over him for a couple of years. Everywhere he were, come and debate me, you're covering, why are you covering the imported stuff? It was funny. I mean, Twitter, because I were on Twitter then, and it was like dynamite, you know what I mean? Oh no, them were the days. No, he didn't like that at all. He didn't like it one bit. But it's just same shit. He's talking same. It's gonna be all fire. This will be a war of absolute. Fuck off, George, you penis. What an asshole. That's good. Glad he's okay. Who is? All right, missing something there. Hi, Jerry Ulick, AMG, and Upward. Ulick, thanks to whoever it was who recommended a very good read, The Rulers of Evil. Chuprasase. Okay. Very good vid. Says John, wife was in tears tonight, says Mew, at the apathy of our country folks. Just got too much for her. Frustration. Them girlies don't have to do some scracking, don't they? But then that's the release. That's why they don't go around beating people up. Paul O'Neill says Irish buses are removing cash machines from buses later this year. There are now coffee machines getting installed that don't accept cash, just card or phone transactions. 90% swipe. Don't use cash. Well, I mean, they're not going to give up with that, Paul. Absolutely, they're not going to give up with it. They're going to try and push this to death, which is why you need to get out of currencies, really. Even crypto is going to be... You're still going to be fixed into the system, and if they're going to start... fining you for not doing this and not helping grandma, crypto or not, you're still going to get bummed. Ulick said, did he just say he's foreskins in the race? I've still got my foreskin. Thank you very much. Evening, Paul. Okay, yeah. OnlyFans shot. That's it. OnlyFans, where they do the rudeness. Evening, Paul, says Ulick. Seen you sneaking in the back of the asylum. Evening, Gary, and switched off headphones on bopping around house listening to old school dance. Oh, I used to do that every Sunday. Rock FM, Baz Todd. It was awesome. Just so reminded you of it was yes, it was brilliant. And then it kicked him off. But then I used to be on Rock FM every Sunday night for about 3 hours, I think, with a guy called Roy Basnett, who now works at City Radio, City Talk Radio in Liverpool. I did go on there from him for a while, but his producer didn't like me. So made it very difficult. He used to pretend to ignore me and all that. That's Scousland for you. AMG says, a few people I know are on OnlyFans. Yeah, well, you work in that right place, don't you, me old China? Doesn't surprise me, MG, not one bit, says Mew. They'll be pushing William on stage soon. Well, they're already doing it. Kerry Thompson says, hi, all from Portsmouth. Evening to you, Sam. Are you back in Portsmouth? Good stuff. We're all back up at hotel in May. I don't know whether you're up for that. Not my gig, though. No, I wouldn't show. No matter what. It goes against being a father. Disgusting. I forgot what we were on about. MJ says, look out, Sean. He's going to show something. What do you want to see? Want to see my winkle? No, we scare you to death, honestly. Paul O'Neill says, the British establishment are cleaning house using the police to get information first and make it disappear. Andrew isn't getting out of jail. Well, they're just playing the game with Andrew, aren't they? Let's be honest. Are the Dark Ages coming back? Have we ever left them? It were even darker in the Industrial Revolution. You couldn't see. I remember growing up, you were like smog. Smoke coming out of every chimney. It would permanently drizzle. It weren't until 1976 that we got sunshine. Peggy says, hi, Paul O'Neill. Peggy TJ. 1WS. All right. King William will usher in the New World Order. Well, I think everybody's doing it. A spiffing job on their own. With Modi as a spiritual UN leader, Peggy. AI government and digital ID is coming, says Peggy. John says, go for it again. Problem is, they don't law enforce the policy at all costs, says Jerry. And here's Pedram. Yuli gives a Pinkerton, and Pedram says, so Pedram, of course, is in Iran. Full-blooded Iranian. Good evening. I have lived in Iran, my invaded and occupied homeland, ravaged by the lawless, revolutionary Bolshevik Islamic monstrosity of 1979 to 2026. I don't arm. I do not consent to any arm either. Of course. Well, this is the thing. Anything that's natural law that comes from within is natural. It's real, you know. And if you're getting beaten up, you fight or flight, isn't it? It's a natural chemical reaction, whether you like it or not. It's not something you can control. You can control which one you choose, but that's natural law. So it's a common law. It's going about doing harm to others deliberately that's the problem. Or even if you have an accident, that's fine. Just make it right. So yeah, absolutely. But this idea that you turn the other cheek, malarkey, is a piss take to disadvantage the white honkies against this super invasion. Hey there, Pedram. You've been missed, says Mew. Okay. Paul says, John, I wonder how many good vid one has watched. Too many. Over the years, too many. Not enough action calls where we're being entertained. Because we're being entertained. Okay, yeah. Everybody likes to be entertained. Matters of self-protection, rejecting attempts of harm, punishing those who indeed do harm needs to be clarified. Yeah, absolutely does. Especially with Christians. Yeah, it's... minimum contact is all they need. I don't know. If somebody comes to my door, I'm going to beat the shit out of them to a pulp to make sure they can't do it again. Kind of thing. And once you rally that anger in somebody, no, I'm sorry. Shouldn't have done it. It's just like that. Hi, Sean and all WA people, and hi to Pedram. I thought you'd be eliminated. Glad you're still around. Evening, Treen. Sorry to hear about the doggy. It's in doggy heaven. It's in doggy heaven now. Where are we? Okay. It talks about these sea beasts in the book of Revelation. The beasts rise out of the sea to put one foot in the sea and one foot on land. Of course, they're kings and empires and leaders. The beast from the sea is migrants. No, the beast from the sea is the imperial forces of merchant class. Of course, they're using the Bible as a book script. Yep. Board of peace. They are bored shitless with peace, yes. Book of Daniel, 10 kings, dumbs, give power to the beast, who subdues 3 kings, dumb, which 3. They're literally using the book script to fulfill prophet. Yep. When Witty is put in supervision for protecting superprison for protecting or conscripted, you women are screwed. All the Uber and Deliveroo guys know where you live. Yeah, absolutely. See, when people say, it's disgusting. Stop giving him your fucking money. You know, you're funding it, you dumbasses. Mr. Lydon didn't answer the question you asked for his gatekeeper, didn't allow him to see the question. Absolutely, you're quite right there, Mew. They didn't answer my question. What was my question? I can't remember what I asked. Oh, who benefited? Who were the ultimate beneficiaries from the pinnacle of the ritual and the death of Sydney? That was it. His handler said no. Nah, we're not putting that question on. But where are we? Pedro says, these days I'm watching the Vikings' tough lives. Whatever violence is pushed, we stand our ground and enforce our natural law and common law. Persians, blah, 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 blah. Well, I mean, if you look, Ragnar Lothbrok, okay, he represented chaos. So he was the chaos factor. And of course, in coming here, they learned the peace method. So that's what Ragnar Lothbrok represented, chaos. Through that chaos, they found peace. Yeah, so there's Alfred. That's what they were learning. These little chaos causers were learning that everything they wanted, to settle down, feed the families, works better when it's built on peace. Not let's kill everybody else. This is something the PCIs need to learn. This is something they just can't learn. It's impossible for them to learn it. But never mind. Stuart Evan, except she never climbed a stair, so I hope someone is there to give her a hand. She doesn't need she's not got her legs now, mate. Her legs are gone. She can float up there if she wants. Okay, right, so let's crack on with the gig. So basically, obviously, we're going through the Elizabeth I, James VI of Scotland, because, of course, this follows on from Henry VIII. It was interesting. I was reading some stuff today and yesterday, and the monasteries that I showed you last week, the amount of monasteries that were dissolved and robbed. Henry II, believe it or not, he was a big supporter and financer of the monasteries. So the monastic system was very embedded in the kingship system early on. So it's like I said, everything changed after these crusades, when these Solomons basically took over Western civilization, or at least began it. Right, let's have a look. So this is the gig. Wait a minute. There we go. Now you can see my ugly mush. Right, so basically, it's not massive, it's not major long, I'm not going to bore you stupid, but what I'm going to show is this, again, that this class of Phoenicians, who have always been the mariners, their empires, the riches have always been hidden on the seas, in the treasure islands. This is the colonizing force, and it colonizes nations and takes over their operations of state. Builds a secret society system on the land with its own egomaniacs in each nation. Alright? And then it's hidden in the background, and everybody still believes that it's the nation pushing the empire and the nation benefiting from the empire. Okay? No. The beneficiaries are always these Johnny-come-latelys And once they've installed the people as the aristocrats, they've took over the kingships, the hapless mob, because they're not a people anymore, very easily changed into persons, or humans, as it were. Okay, so there she is. Or he is, because there's a big play back in the day that she were an he, and James were a she. How about that for a piss tech? Which is why that one never sided out, because obviously it couldn't. You know what I'm saying? And James, he liked his boys, his little boys. So anyway, that's debatable, but he won't put it past him, because he weren't exactly very good looking, was he? Let's be honest. And the fingers are always weird. And then we have a little weasel, or a stoat. So let's remember the House Palavicini, which is a Holy See family, financed Henry VIII and Elizabeth I via the House Stanley. Okay, once they got rid of the Plantagenets. Now James the Sixth of Scotland and First of England seemed the natural heir to the childless Elizabeth I. But why did she resist the decision to name him so? Elizabeth feared the instability and the threat of rebellion from those loyal to whoever her successor would be. Her actions seemed irrational. How could she leave the question of her successor hanging for 45 years? Elizabeth's father, Henry VIII, had passed his throne to his only surviving son, her brother Edward VI. And while Edward's reign was a short one, he attempted to name his own successor as Lady Jane Grey. Elizabeth's sister Mary had passed her throne to Elizabeth herself. Indeed, the line of succession had played out exactly as Henry VIII had wanted. Edward, followed by Mary, and then Elizabeth. But what next? If Elizabeth was to produce an heir of her own body, then she would have to have overcome two potential obstacles. One, choosing a bridegroom, and two, surviving childbirth. No previous monarch of England, save her sister Mary, had ever had to think about the physical danger to themselves in order to produce an heir. If a king's wife died in childbirth, he got another one, and so forth until an heir was procured. His life was never at risk during this process. Elizabeth had seen women die again and again as a result of giving birth. Two of her own stepmothers, Jane Seymour and Catherine Parr, had both died shortly after giving birth. So the danger that she might end up with no heir and dead was a very real one to her. So this is the blag that everybody's presented in reason why she didn't. Now, Catherine Parr, having given birth to her daughter Mary, not with Henry, of course, she died of childbirth complications just a few days after the birth of her daughter. Now, remember, Catherine Parr was his last wife, Henry. And not only was she his wife, she was more of his nursemaid. Now, this girl was an exceptionally intelligent Flossie. And she was the one that had educated Edward VI. So Edward VI, in essence, was actually a protege of Catherine Parr. And she was an exceptionally important Flossie in this game, which, of course, would put her as a major threat to these merchant class twat faggots. Okay. Obviously, they needed weak flea bags like Elizabeth and James in order they could procure this new merchant class regime. Okay, so in my opinion, Catherine Parr was an exceptionally important player and maybe had the support of a lot more English than one would like to admit, and that perhaps the reason why Elizabeth didn't name her was because it could have been Catherine. Or indeed, had Edward stayed, it would have been Catherine because he was her protege. So there's an interesting twist that I just thought I'd put in there, because this has been my thoughts as I've studied this in the ancient past when the dinosaurs ruled the earth. Catherine Parr's death was initially the subject of speculation, with some people wondering if Thomas Seymour had poisoned her because he actually wanted to marry Princess Elizabeth. Right, so Catherine Parr, she were obviously playing around with Thomas Seymour while she was married to Henry, who were pretty screwed by then. And she married him not that long after Henry died. But what they're saying is that it looked like he were into Elizabeth because he was a power-seeking nut job. So the speculation could well have been correct. But of course, Thomas Seymour could have been a bit more of an embedded player with the merchant class. And obviously, he was playing his role, which wasn't necessarily egoic, but more in tune with the agenda. Despite being married 4 times, Mary was Catherine's only child. So Catherine had been married 4 times. Thomas was beheaded for treason less than a year after his wife's death. So she gave birth to Mary, whose father was Thomas. It was thought that Thomas had killed Catherine because he actually fancied or wanted Elizabeth under his wing. And he was then beheaded less than a year after Catherine's death for treason, leaving the couple's only child an orphan. So Mary became an orphan. Okay, so Mary would have been quite an important royal child. However, there are a few records explaining what happened to Princess Mary. Big red flags, ladies and gentlemen. She never inherited Sudley, and all records of her cease to exist after 1550. It is therefore believed by many that she died in infancy. So if she died in infancy, fine, or if she was being used as a breed mare for these name-stealing clans, these PCIs, and this comes before the Red Shield, so they've been at this a lot longer than people think. The Red Shield didn't invent it. Would more than likely be my suggestion of why there were no records of her. Because had she died in infancy, there would have been records. You know? But there is none. That tells me something else went on there, that they don't even want anybody snooping. As the years went by, so they've pretty much got rid of Catherine Parr and her influence by Edward VI gone, Catherine herself gone, her husband gone, and also Mary gone. Okay, that's a lot of effort into getting rid of a very, very smart lady indeed, who was, of course, a Protestant. Well, would make sense, wouldn't it? The Pallavicini being a Holy See family, they wouldn't want an educated Protestant woman, would they? No, they wanted their own James and Elizabeth. Okay, got to see it like this, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody thinks Elizabeth was the uber Protestant. No, she wasn't. She was financed completely by the House Pallavicini. Okay, and this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because this is what history doesn't... If you're just reading verbatim the scripted shit coming from these so-called academics, you miss the subtleties. And you miss the subtleties because you're just reading one script. You've really got to study a subject. If you're studying it, you have to go into every personage involved in the mix, and you've got to get a deep feel of who these people are in order to get that subtle what's going on here. So Catherine Parr would have been an uber intelligent Protestant Flossie. She'd influenced Edward VI. She didn't get to influence Mary. Okay? And of course her husband would have known this. Gone. Because of course, even though James is said to be a Protestant, no he wasn't, neither was Elizabeth. They might have been on the face of it, but whose money were coming in? The Holy See family, Pallavicini. Interestingly, ladies and gentlemen, the very family that controls Sunni Islam. So that's all the Islam of Arabia, Pakistan, India, Sunni Islam. The only difference to Islam outside of that is in Iran, the Shias. But as we know, Bedroom doesn't think much of them either. So this House Pallavicini have controlled these isles since the Breakspear left and they installed the House Stanley, who removed the Plantagenets and put the Tudors on the throne. killed Arthur, so that got rid of any Arthurian influence into the mix, and put on this very strange fella called Henry. Financed him, shifted him off the Vatican, created an empire that didn't show itself having anything to do with Rome. Oh no, it were them wasps that did it, gov. Yeah? Financed Elizabeth. She robbed the Spanish galleons that were piling all the gold and silver out to South America, and built the base for what would come next in the Civil War and the shift of the headquarters of this merchant class from Holland into London. So Venice to get away from Napoleon to Holland, and then from Holland to London. That's the game they've played, this merchant class, as they've taken over nations. Right, as the years went by and it became clear that Elizabeth would not be producing an heir of her own, those around her began questioning her about the identity of her heir. The most obvious of who was James, because of course James was Mary Queen of Scots' little fella, or daughter. Elizabeth had been the heir to the throne during her sister's reign, so Mary, and she knew what a precarious position it was to be in, always in fear of your life from your enemies, and always in fear of being implicated in rebellions from your allies. She in fact communicated this to her parliament. "Be careful what you wish for," she said. "I was first in line to the throne during my sister's reign, and not only is it not a good idea for that person." Did she use the word person? I very much fucking doubt it. "But it isn't a good idea for the realm. Immediately that person becomes a focus for plots." And you're telling me they use the term person. So they're fibbing. Straight away they're lying tits off. I very much doubt she'd use the term person. We haven't got to 1666 yet. Can you see how it's all bunkum? But because you've put it in... you go, "Hey, it must be fucking real. She said it. She bloody said it, did she? She said it." Okay. While some saw it as dangerous for Elizabeth to not name an heir, bringing instability to the line of succession, she made a very good case for it being more dangerous to name one. Well, it's accession, not succession. Again, another play. Another play and insight into the fact that you're not actually dealing with the monarchical constitutional monarchy, even at her time. Okay? Elizabeth was James' godmother, and although circumstances had forced her hand, and she had sent his mother, Mary, Queen of Scots, to the block, their relationship had managed to survive even that. She likely knew that her ministers and leading subjects were in touch with him over the issue of succession, especially in her later years. She's likely. It could have been, it might have been, this might have been. It's all wind and piss. But everybody says, it's verbatim, because everybody else says it. Although she never officially named James as her heir, because it wasn't, it is believed there was an understanding between them. It's believed. Oh, it's fucking believed, so it must be real. Again, they're believed. They've used that word believe for reason. Because that's for you out there. Because they know you're going to go, "Oh, it must be fucking real." Because everything we believe is real. Excuse me. You get it? Language. It's all about language. What are you? She likely knew that her ministers and leading subjects were in touch with him. Though she never officially named James her heir, it is believed, so it must be true, there was an understanding between them. When Elizabeth finally closed her eyes after a long and prosperous reign in 1603, the succession passed smoothly and peacefully to James. Well, she weren't there to say any different, was she? Now then, now we're starting to get into what's really going on and why did they need Elizabeth and not Catherine or Edward. The Levant Company. Elizabeth I began the 1592 letters patent which established the Levant Company by thanking three men who in sundry late years travelled and caused travel to be taken. It was a radical claim which framed these three, Edward Osborne, Richard Staper, and William Harborne, as the masterminds of the new stream of economic potential. Osborne, Staper, and Harborne, the letters implied, were solely responsible for the steady stream of Levantine goods arriving in London. They, along with all other merchants named on the charter, were granted free licence to trade and traffic by and through the Levant seas, into and from all and every. It was a hugely important moment for the Anglo-Levant relationship, and the result of over a decade's worth of diplomatic work. Now, what have I said about the Levant? What it is? It's not a holy land, nothing like that. It's a pivotal point of trade between Africa, Europe, and Asia. It's always been so. The Second Temple was Persia putting their command centre in that trade centre. Okay, which Egypt didn't like because they had control of it, and civilization didn't like it, so Albion sent Yeshua to screw it up. So what Egypt couldn't do militarily, Yeshua did, teaching the right shit. And then, of course, Rome backed it and snotted it. Watched an interesting film the other night. I forgot its name. It's the name they gave to the Jewish assassins who used to hunt down the Romans. Very interesting film. Very good, because that's a system that they're trying to form everywhere. Gangs everywhere. Nobody's together. Everybody's gangs, individual gangs, and they just control the mayhem. So here you get the Anglo bunch, because, of course, of Elizabeth has got an open door into the Levant now, of course, who control the Levant at this time. Well, you're going to get to see in a minute. And so again, it all makes sense. This is all merchant class pretending to be monarchs, pretending to be aristocrats. Excuse me. And in the main, so many of our historical battles between aristocrats and houses, or this takeover by the merchant class, being opposed by the official aristocracy, you know. Richard Hakluyt's Principal Navigations is a seminal work in the historical narrative of English exploration and colonisation, but not an unbiased one. By comparing social network maps of the contemporary Anglo-Levant community with textual analysis of Principal Navigations, this article will demonstrate the ways in which editorial practices reinforced Hakluyt's personal biases in the text's portrayal of the Levant and Eastern Mediterranean. How this bias has resonated in the following centuries to colour conceptions of the late 16th century English-Levant relationship, and suggests avenues for the study of unexplored perspectives on this history. During the first half of the 16th century, English access to the Levant was limited, largely controlled by Italian states, with the Venetian Republic acting as proto-middlemen, alongside a fleet of Flanders galleys. So, you wanted to get into the Levant, that pivotal point of trade, you had to have the Venetian Republic on side, okay? And the Italian states. Well, once they'd got Blighty, through Pallavicini, a Venetian Italian family, and then especially Elizabeth, access can be granted because they're all working for the same gig. Yeah? The journeys these goods undertook to reach England raised their prices and accordingly their social cachet. In following decades, the established balance of power in the Mediterranean began to shift, threatening established Venetian trade routes and increasing the need for a direct Anglo-Levant passage. In 1553, Anthony Jenkinson, an English merchant, was granted special licence from Suleiman I to trade in the Ottoman Empire. At this point, Jenkinson was still an anomaly within the wider context of English merchants, but his journeys to Aleppo and the Levant is commonly viewed as the beginning of the direct Anglo-Ottoman relationship. Hakluyt would treat Jenkinson's licence as such a starting gun, and when compiling the Levantine material in Principal Navigations 30 years later. Now, I did a report on Akaluk because it's still living, it still exists, and it's an intelligence operation, and it controls the Centre for European Reform. Okay? Obviously you can look at this link, but I'll open it up anyway. Then you can see it for yourself. But Hakelut is alive and well, and it's behind the corporate intelligence force in the EU Union. So it's the city. I've said before that the city is the beneficiary of the European Union. Now, this is why Stormer, the city gig, is moving to force us back into Europe. Yeah, it has to be. It's a given gig for the simple reason. Oh, I'll tell you what I've done. So that is well worth a shufti. Then I've gone to Britannica, another biography on Richard Hakluyt, and then Wikipedia. So you've got a few links there just to further your grasp on who that fella is, because it's still going. That idea is still going on today, and of course it's a city operation intelligence. Okay, now, in the decade following Jenkinson's license, 3 separate joint stock companies had been formed focusing on the trade. The Spanish Company in 1577, the Turkey Company in 1581, and the Venice Company in 1583. Alright? So this East India Company is a lot bigger and a lot older than you think. And to believe that the British East India Company was the be-all and end-all of this merchant class is because that's what they wanted you to see. But it certainly isn't the full story. It's just that the headquarters of this massive conglomerate, this Phoenician conglomerate, was moved from Venice to Ireland to London. And then its military side was moved to the United States. All right? Queen Elizabeth I of England formally created the East India Company on December the 31st, 1600. A royal charter issued that day granted state backing to a band of London merchants who wanted to monopolise the spice trade in the East Indies, gave it exclusive rights to trade in India and the Far East, and its first trading post in India was set up at the city of Surat in 1607. King Charles II extended the company's charter, and its influence in India grew until the end of the 18th century, when it controlled the whole country. So again, Charles II, the puppet of this Venetian system, whom all these bastards and offspring make up our aristocracy, including this royal house. And Camilla. Yeah? So Charles II, just another player. A puppet, a mere puppet. Nothing outside of this. Yeah, so it's just a continuum with him. Where are we? Yeah. Now, a point of note here, just so we don't get too excited. The Portuguese in 1498, so this is after the expulsion of the so-called Jews from Spain, in 1492, were first company that came to India. So the Portuguese were the first. They were the first colonizers to Europe. So obviously the Portuguese, being Templar, clearly is, even though they pretend themselves as Christians, they were the Solomon Templars, which is why Abe Finkelstein gives you insight into that and the fact that these people have been involved in Rome since he set it up, which he's talking about the Church of Peter. All right. But they got into it through the battles with Carthage, because Carthage was a Phoenician base on North Africa, which created Islam. Which is why they say Rome created it. Well, that's because Carthage became embedded in Rome because of the battles. And it was the Carthaginian elites that financed Julius Caesar and his ego. Because everything he did in Gaul, these wars he was carrying out, were illegal. They weren't sanctioned by the Senate. So it really was Julius Caesar. As much as I like him when I've read his biographies and his stuff, I quite like the guy, but he were an egomaniac, and because of that and his financing, he became the tool for the Carthaginians, who were the Phoenicians on North Africa. Right. The Portuguese in 1498 were the first company that came to India with Vasco da Gama, who had discovered the sea route to India via Cape of Good Hope from Africa, so going under Africa. The Dutch East India Company came in 1595. The English East India Company came to India in 1600. Okay? So these merchants from Holland, because of the fact that they took over Scotland, introduced by Robert the Bruce, completed by David I, with the mass importation of European aristocracy. They were ready already before the English Civil War. They already had control of the monarchy here on England, enough to have these English East India Company set up, the Levant Company set up, the Africa Company set up, all these other, there were various, a lot more than just the British East India. They'd already got that together. They had full control of our monarchy. It just needed a civil war to cement that in the minds of the populace, and of course to move the headquarters of this East India system into London. All right, now there we have a biography of Vasco da Gama of Britannica. Again, remember, this is not the 9th edition, so use your own discretion and look at what they're not saying. So the East India Trading Company, mermaid lions on the sea. We are the East India Trading Company. Under my rule, we cannot fall. Under God, we cannot die. Samuel Harrington, former Lord Marshal of the EITC. Under God, Zeus. Yeah, to do with Jesus. Or Yeshua, rather. The East India Trading Company is a free trade federation which manages trade between the East Indies, Africa, England and the Caribbean. It has many branches, the most famous, of course, being the Caribbean branch. The Caribbean branch is currently out of commission due to the formal removal set forward by the King of several of its leaders. The East India Trading Company reports directly to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. So this is an older school thing. The East India Trading Company summarisation. The East India Trading Company is divided into many branches, each with a specific purpose. These branches, some large, some small, are divided into guilds. The main branch of the East India Trading Company, EITC, are those of its military branch, the Black Guard, or today, the Black Watch. It's evident in all areas of the East India Company being composed of the most elite men in the entire company. The Black Guard is a force of mercenaries from around the globe hired to protect, defend, lead the company. The members of this particular branch can be found at all of the company's trading ports on land, protecting and governing the mines, the trading offices, and of course on the sea, protecting their valued ships. So they were all hunting down the pirates. The British Corps Elites is the main guild of the East India Trading Company, out of which the EITC is controlled by its respective commanders. The Guild Master of British Corps Elites is Sven Daggersteel. The EITC does have an official ranking system which can be found below. The EITC was founded by Queen Elizabeth I in 1600 to fulfil England's need for trade. The most notable EITC military-based guilds are as follows: British Corps Elites, British Black Guard, British Kingdom and Armed Guard. The East India Trading Company has quite a few leaders that allow for the organisation and peace among the company to be long-lasting. The EITC is supported in defence by the British Royal Navy and the British Royal Marines. The EITC has also its own fleet, which has come to be known as Beckett's Armada, named after the company's former head, Lord Governor Cutler Beckett. The ranking system is quite long. Nobody is permitted to choose their own rank. Your rank is given to you by only an officer of the East India Trading Company. You are required to take orders from those of higher rank. The ranks that follow will list those of the Navy and Army, which is basically just a it's what we know as our military and Navy today, really. is it any wonder they've been thrust around the world? It's actually always been this company that we've all operated for. Yeah, so Lord and High Lord are the titles command, High Commanding Officers, Lord Constable, Lord Chancellor, Lord Treasurer, Lord Commissioner, Lord Marshal, Lord Governor, Field Marshals, Admiral of the Fleet, all this stuff, yeah. British Empire, it's got fuck all to do with England, mate. The ITC is comprised of several branches, each of which has a very specific purpose in the governing of the East India Trading Company. Here are a few of these branches: East India Enterprises, East India Trading Co. Bank, East India Trading Co. Shipwright Industry, EITC Press Office, East India Trading Co. Hall of Fame, EITC Court Directors, the ruling body of the ITC that contains the directors for the affairs of foreign countries. I do actually have somewhere a book with all the people in it from, I think, 5-year period. I'll have to try and dig that out. Now then, if you look at what's all the defunct banks in India today, they're defunct, but what they've all done is merge. They've all merged with supposedly independent banks belonging to India, when in fact they're not. The same merchant class will control them. And obviously, so the main link to the page of it on Wiki is there. But I just went through a few to show that this is East India Company were involved in all these. Madras Bank, 1683. Bank of Bombay, 1720. Carnatic, 1788, etc., etc. All these are defunct, but they've merged. So it's the same thing. India thinks it's had independence. It has from the British government. But it was never the British government that were controlling the East India companies in the first place that took over India. If you see my drift. And the British East India Company only carried on what the Portuguese had done and what the Dutch had done in all arenas. Once it's entered in London, they all amalgamated and came under that mantle. That's what's happened. So there's just a few banks, and there's a lot more. That page will take you to a ton of them, but they're all formed under British East India Company gigs and now merged. Now the Dutch East India Company, or VOC as it's called, and this is what built the global empire. So this was the sort of blueprint from which all else followed. It must have been great with them big galleon ships back in them days, I have to say. A lot more better than this metal shit show we've got going today. Before modern multinationals, before Wall Street power, before shareholder capitalism became a global language, there was a 17th century company that operated like a nation. It had fleets bigger than many states. It maintained soldiers and forts. It negotiated treaties like a kingdom. It minted coin, ran courts, and governed overseas populations. Its name was the Verenig de Oostindische Campagne, or the VOC, founded in 1602. Once you understand what it really is, you realise something uncomfortable. The modern world didn't just grow out of the parliaments and palaces, whose part of it grew out of companies that learned to rule. Well, the palaces and parliaments were there first. This is the method by which colonisation has took place, and it's took place over all nations to today. They have the entire world in their hand. Yeah? You got the whole world in his hand. Yeah, that's fucking Zeus. Everybody thinks it's Jesus and all that. Yeah, okay. Because you were brainwashed when you were flea bags. This is the colonising agency. It's the Phoenicians. And so it is. The hidden royalty to all this are Phoenicians. And we don't know who they are. If it's a front, you can see it. It's a front, sorry. If you can see it, it's a front. No matter how hoity-toity they are. They're all working for the man. Or wench. Oh, well, it's a whore, innit? Now, why the VOC was created, in the late 1500s and early 1600s, Europe was addicted to Asian goods, and spices were the crown jewel. Cloves, nutmeg, mace, pepper, cinnamon. These weren't just flavour. They were prestige, medicine, preservation, and profit. Portugal had dominated the sea routes for a long time. Spain was a superpower. England was rising. And the Dutch Republic, newly independent and fighting for survival during the 80 Years' War, needed money, ships, and access to trade to stay alive. Dutch merchants were already sailing to Asia, but they were competing against each other so hard that they were driving down their own profits. So the Dutch state backed a solution, merged the rival companies into one mega enterprise with a monopoly on Dutch trade east of the Cape. That merger created the VOC, a company designed not just to trade but to win. The secret weapon, shares, investors, and the birth of the corporate machine. One of the most revolutionary things about the VOC wasn't a cannon, it was a financial idea. The VOC raised enormous capital by selling shares to investors. People could put money in, share risk, and earn returns from global voyages. This helped build on one of the first truly modern systems of large-scale investment tied to long-distance trade. Amsterdam's financial ecosystem, merchants, insurers, brokers, banks, grew into the world centre because the VOC needed a constant flow of credit and capital. In many ways, the VOC didn't just ride the wave of capitalism, it helped engineer it, and then it attached that engine to global conquest. How it was run, a corporate empire with a boardroom core. The VOC wasn't one captain making decisions at sea, it was a machine. It was governed by a central leadership body known as the Hareen the 17th, the 17 Lords, representing different Dutch chambers, cities, regions like Amsterdam, Zeeland, and others. This matters because the VOC was built to be scalable. Decisions could outlive a single leader. Policies could be repeated, fleets could be rotated, forts could be supplied, local allies could be funded, rivals could be squeezed for decades. This wasn't just raiding, this was system power. This is the Phoenician model, ladies and gentlemen. And as I've said before, if you study the relationship between Prince Philip and Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, it's very clear who's the head on shore. The Dutch royal family are way above the Windsors in power. Batavia, the VOC's Asian capital. The VOC's real empire needed a command centre in Asia, not Europe. So they built one, Batavia, or modern Jakarta, on Java. Batavia became their headquarters, the place where cargo was organised, fleets assembled, officials trained, and policy executed across the entire ocean world. It was a European-style colonial capital, designed to protect control outward to ports, islands, and trade lanes. From Batavia, the VOC would coordinate an Asian network like a spider at the centre of a web. Trade turns into war, monopoly requires force. Here's the part that separates the VOC from just merchants. The VOC was chartered with quasi-sovereign powers, including the right to use armed force, and it used that power aggressively in pursuit of monopoly. To control spice production, the VOC fought European rivals, the Portuguese and the English, but also waged harsh campaigns against local resistance in key spice zones, restructuring trade and production in ways that ensured Dutch control. In places like Banda Islands, nutmeg VOC policy became infamous for its brutality and coercion. Monopoly wasn't only business strategy, it was a state-like domination. Profit demanded control of land, labour and shipping. The VOC showed the world a new reality. A company would behave like an empire and justify it as trade protection. The VOC's footprint, ports, choke points and maritime highways. The VOC didn't conquer everything, it conquered what mattered most. The nodes. Government. Power. Kings. Royal houses. Aristocracy. Ports. Yeah, that's exactly what they've done everywhere. And then it goes secret society control from overt to secret. This is how they've done it. When they feign independence for a nation, it's not. It's just gained independence from the public side because the private side has took full control. There's your secret societies. There's the real power of the secret societies. They are the power on this earth. That's where it is. It's why you can't find it in history, because you're studying monarchs. It's the secret societies where everything moves. This is what they were teaching me in the mystery school. Doesn't matter what religion you are, as you rise up there, it's all one. And then I told them to piss off. They didn't like that because they taught me too much. Well, what a shame. So, strategic ports, the islands, the choke points, the warehouses, the forts walls where shipping lanes could be controlled. Over time, VOC power stretched across Indonesia, especially Java and the Molucca Spice Islands, Malacca and the straight routes that controlled Asian shipping arteries, Ceylon, Sri Lanka, for cinnamon and Indian Ocean positioning, Cape of Good Hope, South Africa, as a resupply hub, not a spice source, but a lifeline for the long voyage. Taiwan for a time as part of the China trade world. Japan, Dashima, one of the most fascinating chapters. The VOC became a key European conduit for trade with Japan under strict controls. Trading factories and relationships along ports of India's coast and broader Asian networks. So this wasn't one colony, it was a chain system of maritime control. The VOC and the globalization prototype. The VOC helped connect distant worlds into a single profit network. Asian production zones, shipping lanes and fortress ports, European consumer markets, financial institutions that priced risk, insured cargo and funded expansion. And what moved through this network wasn't just spice, it was textiles, tea, porcelain, silver, timber and strategic materials, plus the movement of people, soldiers, sailors, administrators, enslaved persons and coerced labour in colonial systems. Now, Enoch Powell had a great interview on why this country got took over so easily. It's because we didn't really have an identity outside of imperial identity. So any Johnny come lately could come here because they were part of the British. So like when you see British potatoes, well, it could be Timbuktu too. Anyone that's part of the British Empire. But while you all see British as England and Scotland, you miss the game altogether, and that's on you. That's a lack of education. And what moved through this network wasn't just spice. I've done that. Oh, wait. Yep. This is why the VOC matters. It helped create early modern globalization, but with a blade behind it. Now, we expressed this the other week, that China played a pivotal role in this. A major role, for the simple reason, within China, it could manufacture everything. The only thing it didn't have was silver. But Japan had a lot of it, and Japan supplied China with its silver until Japan had to stop because it were detrimental to its own reserves. Now, this is when China looked outward, and of course, at the same time, you've got Spain robbing the daylights out of South America, specifically the silver mountain that they had on the borders of Brazil and I think Chile. And that mountain of silver is still there today. Now, that was the only currency that China would accept for trade outside of China. And that was a problem for these East India companies because there was nothing they could offer China to trade. China had everything. So China was amassing silver on a great scale. But and then selling its goods to everybody else. But the changes in silver in taxation in China was the beginning of its end, and that created the Opium Wars. Now, of course, this is when we start to see the rise of the Sassoons, the Dangor and the Kadori and such. These Iraqi or Babylonian Jews in the Middle East. Now, I'm wondering whether they've always been this Phoenician this group, or whether through their money lending activities have managed to take over this conglomerate. I don't know. That is not easy to see. But you can see it, so it's a front. So again, I would say it's all part of this system. And of course, you know, the big sort of branch of power in the Middle East at the time of the Second Temple were the Philistines, which again were Phoenicians. So there's your connection between Babylon, Phoenicians, and Judah. So the other tribes that they called Israel were all tribes that followed the Mosaic law. But in putting in the Second Temple, commissioned by Cyrus, King Cyrus at the time, and pulled in these nut jobs, they forced their will over the top of all these tribes that followed the Mosaic law, but didn't follow the law themselves. They operated under what Yeshua called the laws of man. Today we know as the Talmud. It's in the same way as the Muslims. The Muslims since 1921 have all had a false Quran to study because it sanitized itself. So, for instance, the word kill in the Arabic has been transferred to fight, and they've sanitized it to death. And so even Muslims today think it's a thing of peace if they were born here, because they haven't had to deal with the shit that they have to in their own nations. But this encroaching force called ISIL and all this garbage, they're operating the Arabic translation. So it's kill, terrorize, enslave the non-believers. Just like the rabbinical Jews operate the Talmud while claiming to be of the Torah, will then so be the same for these Islamic terror groups funded and created by Mossad, CIA, etc. They do the same over the top of Islam. So it's not in the interest of Muslims that have been in the West for 70 years to allow this shit show to come in and overtake it. It's not in your interest. You might think it is because you're not that bright and you think you know what you're doing with the book. But you clearly haven't because you've not even read it, Anyway, that aside. Over time, the VOC faced the classic empire problem, corruption in distant administrations. The slow collapse, corruption, war costs and debt, even the strongest machines rust. Yes, but they encroached on the land by this time, hadn't they? Massive costs of forts, garrisons and wars, rising competition in shifting markets, heavier debt burdens, political shocks in Europe that destabilised trade and governance. Actually, what they did is move the whole show to the east. So when they talk about that, we're talking about how it looked in the west. You've got to see it in these terms, ladies and gentlemen. Once the Bolsheviks had took over Russia, then they had a stepping stone from the east because they had Russia ever closer to the encroachment on civilization. By the late 1700s, it was no longer the unstoppable profit machine of the Golden Age. The cost of empire started swallowing the returns of trade. In 1799, the VOC was dissolved and its possessions were taken over by the Dutch state, transforming company rule into a more formal colonial government. The first corporate superpower fell, but the model lived on. Why the VOC still matters? The VOC is one of history's clearest proofs that a corporation can become sovereign, investors can profit from conquest, global trade can be built on coercion, and a company can reshape entire regions for centuries. Coercion, what we were talking about with common law. You've all been coerced to see yourself not as a people, but as a person, while still believing you're of the people. Yep. And what have they installed on you? Commercial Admiralty statutes. This shit show. If the British East India Company is the corporation that conquered India, the VOC is the corporation that proved the blueprint first. Well, actually, it was the Portuguese. And did it cross the oceans with terrifying efficiency? And there's your sources. Now, we get to James, because James, of course, created the King James Bible, which, if you look at it, is a corporate Bible. They've transformed the Bible into a corporate script for you to accept personage, to be charged, to be fined, to be licensed. Born in 1566, James VI and First was the product of Mary's ill-fated marriage to Henry, Lord Darnley. Darnley's assassination in early 1567 and Mary's subsequent over-hasty marriage to one of its perpetrators, Lord Bothwell, poor girl, triggered events that led to Mary's downfall. James VI became King of Scotland in 1567 when Mary was forced to abdicate. On the death of Elizabeth in 1603, he became James I of England. He is thus known as James VI and First. In 1590, he married Anna, the sister of the Danish King Christian IV. They had numerous children, 3 of whom survived infancy. Henry, who died after a short illness. In 1612, Charles, who succeeded James, and Elizabeth, who married Frederick, Elector of Palatine, and the swiftly deposed King of Bohemia. Romantically, she was to become known as the Winter Queen. Unlike his mother or son Charles, James died of natural causes in his own bed in 1625. James was one of the most long-standing monarchs of Scotland, king for 58 years from the age of 1. Of the Scottish monarchs before the Anglo-Saxon Union of 1707, only William the Lion, 1165 to 1214, comes close in longevity. But he is notable not just for the length of his reign, but for the amount that he managed to achieve. within it. One of these achievements, perhaps the most significant as all, was the careful management of his peaceful succession to the English throne in 1603. In doing so, he brought the old enemies, the kingdoms of Scotland and England, together under the kingship of one monarch. This dynastic union became known as the Union of the Crowns, which included that of Ireland too. In 1604, James proclaimed himself King of Great Britain. So completely something different by then. So James's reign produced the first Anglo-Scottish Union. Though this was not a full political union, this helped to form the background to the formal Union of 1707. In 1567, at the age of 1, James was placed in Stirling Castle for his care and safety. Following a visit to sea, Mary was abducted by James Hepburn, Lord Bothwell. Whether or not she was a willing participant is unknown, and forced into marriage to him. The visit proved to be the last time James ever saw his mother. So they were more interested in him, obviously. So who sired him, I wonder, as a male, a bit like the Rothschild do. Over the next 20 years, they had a difficult relationship. It was hampered by the physical distance between them, the problems of communication by letter or word of mouth, and dependent on who had custody of the young king. Most importantly, there were tensions over Mary's attempts to regain the Scottish throne during the English captivity. Mary's return would have compromised James's own kingship. Famously, James did little other than to protest to Elizabeth over Mary's execution in 1587. She didn't really give a shit. As an infant, James had councillors ruling in his name, but he took up personal reign in his mid-teens. In the early 1580s, his childhood was spent at Stirling Castle in the care of Annabella, Countess of Mar. Now, I did a expose of all the changes in the job centre and the work programmes back in the day, and sent it to Countess Mar, who then replied and said, sorry, I can't do anything about it. Well, of course you couldn't, Flossie. You're probably benefiting from it. Whose son became a lifelong friend to the king. He was tutored by the stern Presbyterian humanist George Bucknan. James was a clever boy, very well educated, who learnt the art of argument early. In 1579, aged 12, he made a formal entry as king into Edinburgh. But in the years following, he suffered from political and religious factionalism at court. In 1582, he was abducted in the Ruthven raid by several nobles, including the Earl of Gowrie, who wanted to ensure a Presbyterian-inclined government of Scotland. By 1585, however, James was old enough to begin to impose his own will on the feuding factions. James had strong views on the rights of kings. His tutor Bucknan's book De Jure Regni had called for a contractual monarchy in which kings can be held to account for the actions. This was an attempt to legitimise the overthrow of James's mother Mary. James subsequently published a rebuttal, The True Law of Free Monarchies. It set out the opposing opinion on the duties of the subject to the king and vice versa. So you can see there they're trying to undermine the Magna Carta. He saw himself as one of God's lieutenants on earth, and thus his power was the result of divine will and not to be argued with. James was also renowned for having favourites at court because those men exerted significant power. They stimulated resentment amongst those less favoured because there were a lot of bum shagging going on. Those close relationships have led to speculation that James was gay. Speculation. Although it would be difficult to prove this conclusively, would it? The Protestant Reformation in Scotland created a more Calvinist version of Protestantism known in Scotland as Presbyterianism, in which all participants were said to be equal. James's relationship with the Kirk was somewhat fractious. Although he was a committed Protestant, he believed in a less extreme Episcopalian version of Protestantism, in which the king was the head of the church and ruled it through bishops. His idea of the church's role more closely resembled that of the English Anglican Church. In an infamous incident occurred in 1596 when a Presbyterian minister, Andrew Melville, shook the king by the sleeve, calling him but God's silly vassal in the religious sphere. James' ecclesiastical's legacy endures in the King James Bible of 1611, which he commissioned, which is the problem. In 1590, James married Anna, the sister of the Danish king Christian IV. After a rough crossing of the North Sea, she received a grand formal entry into Edinburgh. She was a powerful figure in her own right and maintained good relations for Scotland with the rich Protestant Danish king. In 1590, as James was attempting to bring home his new Danish wife Anna, a storm blew his ship off course near the coast of East Lothian. Subsequently, several alleged witches from North Berwick were arrested, tortured and executed, a process in which James took an active part. For a time, he was obsessed with uncovering witches and in 1597 published a tract on them, Demonology. James was determined to assert his power as king and crack down on the ancient custom. There's what they used to put round women's necks that they classed as witches. It was a witch's collar. In the ancient custom of blood feud. These violent disputes between families and their large armed retinues were often very long-running. Blood feud was seen as especially prevalent in the borders, though it happened throughout Scotland, and James was the target of the feud there. This was also a part of his suppression of violence and the cross-border raiding in the late 1590s. This was a time when it looked likely that he would succeed Elizabeth on the English throne. The most famous of the border feuds was that between the families of the Scots and the Kerrs. Despite promising on his departure to return every 3 years, James was only to return to Scotland once in 1617, having professed a salmon-like desire to return to the land of his birth. He came with a multitude of English and Scottish courtiers and councillors. He spent around 3 months touring his castles and palaces and those of the great lords and lairds. During this period, he presided over a meeting of the Scottish Parliament, which famously rejected his attempt to get them to pass his ecclesiastical reforms. This became known as the 5 Articles of Perth. Elite Scottish households prepared for the king's visit, and there are several examples of objects and decorations made in case the king came to visit. And there you've got some sources, and then I've given some associated links from my website that will again expand that grasp on things. So there we go. That is basically just more data just to show that actually what this colonising force is actually a merchant class. They control all the immigration into all nations. So all these immigrants who are piling into the West and believe they're fighting the empire, you dumbasses, you are the fucking empire. You are the fucking empire, boys. Only this time, I think it's time we've dealt with the empire. Because it shit all over us, didn't it, when it were here. And that endeth tonight's lesson in the old history. And so thanks for listening. I'll just have a quick gander as what's been said. So I'll only read what's relevant. Mr. Light, yeah, we've done that one. Stuart Evan, yep, done that. Yeah, poison is the famous. Well, it's the females. That's why the Jesuits use it. Very feminine, aren't they? Venetian, which is known as the mothership. Well, they are the new Venetian Party of the North. That's what they call themselves. The old Venetian Party of the North was what you saw in the Habsburg clan and everything that wrapped around that. 7 Kingdoms, Noah, Book of Daniel. 1662, Royal Adventures, Royal African Company. Thanks for that. Hong Kong was the version of City London. First boom and bust was flower bulbs in the Netherlands, says Mew. Dutch auction starts high and reduces down in price. You jump in when you reach what you are aiming to pay for a commodity, says Mew. It looks like cold, says Jerry. Obviously, they don't have control over saffron. That's Iran. Should they want more than just oil and control over Iran? It's the Greater Israel plan. Solvemir says China still needs silver today, hence the silver price rise. And I did say to you before, they've gone into South America, or Trump has. It's not about oil, it's about fucking silver. And I think somebody sent me a video the other day that actually supports that, but I already knew anyway, so yeah. Jerry, I was living down the road from Curtis Warren when he was arrested in Aslenheim. Didn't have a clue. Yeah, there's a bit of shindig going on about Curtis Warren at the moment, isn't it? And a lot of his crew are getting killed in Dubai. They keep turning up dead. Spoken Quran turned into the print Quran. Spoken Quran turned into the print Quran. Well, it's a completely different version. It was they had to create for the West's perusal because it sanitised it. It completely sanitised it. You know, you have to read the Arabic really to get a grip. But you know, when people there is no peace in Islam. It's a war doctrine in its truth. The peace only occurs when they've massacred all the males and enslaved and shagged to death all the women. Then they have peace. They've got peace of mind. They've done the dirty deed. That's peace for Islam. They just don't know it. They're fooled. They don't read the fucking book. You know, it's like all these priests go, I'm a Christian. Have you read the book? More to the point, did you grasp it? Did you understand it? No, did you fuck? Honestly. He was back in the headlines recently. Yeah, he has. Yeah. They all keep dying, don't they, in Dubai? China's processing the silver for the world market at the moment. NC have been refusing export orders. Book of Legal, not the law. What's the chances? Spend a penny without someone being all over him. Honestly, the restrictions put on him, I've never seen anything like it, especially the money side. I'm missing something there. I knew people who worked at the airport. Francis Bacon, the illegitimate child, rewrote others in the Bible. So they say. I looked at the subject of this money recently. He can't fight without it being known crime doesn't pay. Oh, we're talking about Curtis Warren. Thanks, says Weefy Man. Thanks, says Jerry. And thanks, says June. Right, chaps and chapesses, thanks for joining. Mods, thanks for modding. And I hope you have a good week. It's warmed up a little bit. That's going to be good. And I'll say, as always, have a great week. Till the next time.
electronic, electronic,